Hi. I wanted to quickly go over the Eckwell-Schenker case study sessions for this week. This is the first week that you'll be going out and visiting with your student, and so I wanted to cover the first three sessions, sessions 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to go to the actual page that, and let me share my screen with you here. I'm going to actually go to the page that I had you upload that was called the case study sessions, and there's a link to this actually in your on the blackboard. It's over on the left hand side, but I did want to share this with you. So sessions 1 and or 2 is going to be getting to know your case study student, and not just getting to know them as a person. You want to sit down with them and talk with them, but you also want to do a couple of what we call interest inventories and attitude surveys with them. So the first one that you are going to run is the Eckwell-Schenker Test 12, and it's right in the Eckwell-Schenker. I don't know the page number right off the top of my head, but it's Test 12. Go in there, and there's actually, for each test that you give, there's something called a crib sheet. It walks you through how you give it. Please read that ahead of time. Then the interview, which can also be completed with the interest inventory, what you're doing there is you're going to ask some questions that are going to help you in determining what books that you are going to pick for later sessions for this student. What you're trying to find out there are what are some of the things that this student might want to read about. And now they may tell you, I don't like to read about anything. Well, just find out their interests, because some students have a problem with reading if they've struggled with reading, which hopefully your student has some struggle with reading. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless to do this case study with them. But if they have an issue with reading or have struggled with reading, then that's oftentimes why they think, I don't like to read about anything. And they might not. But if you can find a good book that has something that they're interested in as far as pictures that go with something that they're interested in, that's always helpful to kind of get them started or pointed in that right direction. Most of us, when we read for pleasure, pick a book that we read. I mean, I read do-it-yourself books all the time because that's one of my hobbies. So I'll pick up a magazine off of the shelf at the store, but I would not probably pick up like People magazine. Doesn't interest me. Those type of gossip column things don't interest me. But I do like to read about how to fix things, and so I would pick up that kind of magazine. Well, the same thing goes with a student. And if you find out the interest of your student, which you should do that, and hopefully you're all doing that in your classrooms, if you have a classroom of your own students, you're finding out what their interests are so that you can determine, not just, have a good conversation with them about things that they might do or enjoy, but also to help them pick books that are in different genres about that same topic. So somebody might like animals. Well, there are actually fiction and nonfiction, scientific books, all kinds of stories about animals that you could pick for them that might draw their interest in. It's really good sometimes to find out their specific interest in animals. I had one student, killer whales was his thing, and all through third grade he wanted to read all the books in the library. I think he did, probably more than once, read all the books in the library on killer whales. Now, he wasn't a big reader, but when he got to those books, he read them front cover to back cover and shared them with other people around him because that was something he was interested in. So the reader interview, it's to get to know the reader a little bit better. It also will help you when you're filling out the case study LAP form. In the top portion of the LAP form, you're going to be writing a pretty detailed biographical sketch of your student. Some of the stuff that you get from the reader interview would be a good thing to fit in that. Talk to them about their family, about their brothers and sisters, pets. Ask them, just have a good conversation with them. They'll help determine some of the things that might, like when you pick a book for them later on to read, do a running record from, you want to make sure that it's something that they will actually enjoy reading. It does help, and students do read better when it's something that interests them. The Garfield reading and writing interest surveys or attitude surveys, there is a video right here. If you click on this, it'll take you to a video on how to score it. The surveys, you can actually access them right here, and they're kind of fun. Students like circling the mad Garfield or the happy Garfield when they're doing that. I want you to run these surveys with the student. And kind of, if they start circling everything happy or everything bad, ask them to think about it very carefully, especially beforehand. But there is a video on how to score that. I do want you to give the scores for that, not just their overall attitude, but what each category means. You're going to need to write that up in the top part of the LAP. It's the very first test and the very first part of the LAP that you're going to write up. This will be the best way to do this or go about doing the LAP is right after the session while it's fresh on your mind. Anything, because anecdotal things, which when we're taking anecdotal notes, anecdotal things that stand out to you, you tend to forget after 2 or 3 sessions. So please take the time to fill out the LAP every session as you complete them. All right, some of the other things that you'll want to run in this first session with the student is the learning style survey and the multiple intelligence survey. It says and or, but I would run both. The learning styles will help you determine if the student is auditory, visual, kinesthetic, different types of learning. The multiple intelligences will be a really good when you're determining books that the student likes. Some of them are music smart, some of them are body smart, some of them are science smart, and it will help in determining what are some things that might interest them when you're picking books for them to read. Now, anytime you take anecdotal notes, these are notes that during the session, some things stand out to you. And so after each session, you want to take these notes during the session or right after the session, but some things that you might notice that aren't necessarily being tested while you're running certain tests might be fluency, sight word knowledge, decoding strategies, and yeah, I'm reading right off this thing for you, and I know you can read yourself, but some other things would be distractions in the room or the distractibility of the student, and any other notes that you feel might be included. The session didn't go so well, but I think it was because there were people walking by, and every time somebody walked by, the student would look up and be distracted. These are things that we call anecdotal notes that help somebody else who's reading the LAP later at a later date, maybe a teacher or a parent, to understand, oh, this is why this score might be so low, or give some other kind of indication. If you're looking for patterns, a lot of times your anecdotal notes will be something that help develop in patterns, especially a fluency pattern where you're not sure exactly what's going on during a running record, and you look back and say, oh yeah, they have the same problem when I was doing the attitude survey and I had them read something from that page. These are some of the things that you can put in your anecdotal notes. Always note the date and time of the session in your notes, and there's a place for that in the LAP, and there's one column that's just for date and time. Make sure that you fill out that column for every test. Also, this is at the bottom of all of these sessions. Save all your materials that you use with the student. Again, we have a link, all these links. Whoa, didn't mean to jump there. Hold on just a second. Let me clear that off. I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing, but I need to remove this. Minimize that. There we go. I don't know if that popped up for you or not, but it sure did for me. All right. Anyway, so now I want to talk about session 3. So session 3, I think I put this in the syllabus. I know I put this somewhere, and I know I talked about it in the first time I talked about these case study sessions, but what I talked about was that you limit these sessions to an hour. I have a feeling that by the time you do all the session 1 and 2 things, you're probably going to hit that hour limit. So you don't want to start jumping into session 3, and you really can't do session 3 until after you've had a break from session 1 and 2. So you want to do 2 sessions in 1 week, and yes, we're having to do double the work every week because we're taking a 16-week course and putting it into 8. So session 3, what you're going to do for session 3. Now, this as a choir, you don't have to take these to the session, but you need to get 3 chapter books and or picture books based on the student recommendations and your evaluations from sessions 1 and 2. So in other words, based on the student's interest, you're going to pick 3 books. Okay. Now you don't know the reading level of the student yet, but pick one above level, below level, and on level for what you think the student might be at. And you can get that information from the student's teacher. Usually they'll give you an AR level. I will tell you this: the AR level is typically lower than what they are actually reading on, at least at the instructional level. So what I do want you to do is pick 3 books that would be interesting for the student to do, and you're going to use one of those books to do a running record of 1 paragraph. All right. And there's a link to doing a running record on Dr. Gentry's website. If you go to running records on his website, there is a link there that will help you on how to do a running record appropriately. You're going to time it. So running record is you have a copy of the text in front of you that you've either typed up or that you made a copy of, and the student is reading from the text, and it can also be a copy or it can be the actual book itself. I prefer to let the student read directly from the book. It gives a more realistic feel to the assessment. You're going to time it and record orally the student while they do the reading. Now, I also like to take anecdotal notes during a running record, but I usually do not mark the student miscues on my sheet until after the student is finished. And the reason for that is this. I don't care how good you are at doing running records, it is very difficult to get all the miscues on the first pass. Now, if there's some obvious miscues or they said a word a certain way, but what you're going to find when you listen to the recording is 1, that you didn't get them all, and 2, that you heard things the first time through that you thought you heard, but when you listen to the recording, it sounds different. And so our brain has a way of filling in gaps. I think I've talked about that before in one of my other recordings. And because our brain sometimes fills in the gaps, sometimes we actually make corrections in what the student has said, even though they didn't actually read it correctly. So I'm asking you to record these orally so that you can go back and do the markings, the running record markings. Now, there is in the Eckwall-Schenker, there is a format or a way to mark miscues for running records in there. I would ask that you use that format so that the format stays the same. I know some of you probably have your own method of marking running records, and so I'm asking you to refrain from doing that and actually use the method that is in the Eckwall-Schenker book. All right, so let's go on to further down here. You're going to do a running record of one of the paragraphs. Now this does not say do an interactive strategy guide sheet for use with one book. It says prepare an interactive strategy guide sheet. So you would do that after the visit. Now this interactive strategy guide sheet for use with one book is going to be something that you do with the student at a little bit later on. It's going to have you do that. Anyway, I want you to do that with the student, but you want to prepare one with one of those books that you picked out. So here's one that you are going to do. If you go to Reading Rockets, this link right here, it's going to walk you through the story retelling experience. So after the student has read the text, that book from the book that you got, you're going to have them retell the story. And go ahead and use the same book that you did the running record from. You want to have them read that in some way, and there's different ways of doing that. This story map is one of those ways. Here's another one for digital storytelling. There's a couple links down here that you may use. Anyway, pick one of those 3 and do a story retelling. Okay, then it says to find an assessment that you would like to use that is not required by this case study assignment. It says your choice must be based on past observations. Well, you're only in session 3, so you don't have a lot of past observations. But if you click this link, there are some other assessments that are not in the Eckwall-Schenker reading inventory that you can do with the student in session 3. All right, anecdotal notes based on, okay, so then you're going to take your anecdotal notes, write those up, fill in the session 3 on the case study, the LAP, for the things that you did. And there is a place for each one of these. So there's a place for you to put the title of the book that you did. There's another one, there's a place further down in the LAP, it says RR1. Please do not move these assessments around in the LAP. We have put them in the order that they are on the LAP for a reason. Okay, once again, the session checklist that you're using, session 1, session 2, session 3, is in chronological order. The way that we have you putting the assessments on the LAP is a thematic order. So please keep that in mind to not move it around. It's one of the mistakes some of my students made last semester, and they moved some of the assessments around on the LAP. We have them on the LAP that way for a reason. All right, let me move on down. So anyway, that's sessions 1, 2, and 3. Fill out the LAP and save all the materials that you used with the student. Again, don't forget to do section 3 in the Eckwall-Shanker and take the quiz this week for that. That will also be due by next Tuesday at midnight or Monday at 11:59, however you want to look at it. Anyway, hopefully this session has been helpful for you. This is for doing sessions 1, 2, and 3 in the LAP and in the case study assignment. I'll be talking to you soon.